I still remember standing outside that old house holding a letter from my mother after 7 years of silence. At 16, I believed her remarriage would finally give me what I had always wanted: a complete family, a father figure. I never imagined that the man who promised to treat me like his own son would one day ask me to destroy my future for the sake of his real son. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family sacrifice and what it truly means to choose yourself. Before I take you back to where it all began, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I turned my pain into power. Now, let me tell you what happened. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, just my mother and me. My father died in a workplace accident when I was 10 years old. One moment he was there, strong and full of life, and the next moment he was gone. I remember the phone call, the way my mother collapsed against the kitchen wall, the way our whole world shattered in a single afternoon. My mother, Linda, worked as a night shift nurse at the local hospital. She would leave for work when the sun went down and come home when it was rising, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but always finding the energy to make me breakfast before I went to school. We did not have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. From an early age, I understood that education was my way out. I was always at the top of my class, especially in math and science. While other kids played video games after school, I was at the library studying, dreaming of becoming an engineer. I took on odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, washing cars, anything to save money for college and help my mother with the bills. My mother always told me the same thing. She would hold my face in her hands, look into my eyes, and say, "Your education is our ticket out of this life, Justina. Never give up." Those words became my fuel. Every late night, studying every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, I would hear her voice and keep pushing forward. When I was 15, everything changed. My mother met a man named Gerald at the hospital. He was an administrative manager there, a tall man with graying hair and a smile that seemed warm at first. He was 52 years old, divorced with a son named Derek, who was 17, 2 years older than me. In the beginning, Gerald was charming. He brought flowers for my mother, took us out to nice dinners, and made promises that sounded like dreams. He told me he would treat me like his own son, that we would be a real family. I wanted to believe him. After 5 years of watching my mother struggle alone, I wanted nothing more than to see her happy. I thought maybe finally I would know what it felt like to have a father again. They got married when I was 16. We moved into Gerald's house, a bigger place than our small apartment with a backyard and 2 floors. I had my own room for the first time in my life. I remember thinking that this was the beginning of something good, but the cracks appeared almost immediately. Derek was not like me. He was an average student at best with no motivation to improve. He spent most of his time playing video games, skipping classes, and hanging out with friends who seemed to have no direction in life. From the very first day I moved in, he made it clear that he did not want me there. He would walk past me without saying a word, his eyes cold and dismissive. The first real sign of trouble came a few months after the wedding. I won first place in the school science fair, a project I had worked on for 3 months. When I told the family at dinner, Gerald barely looked up from his plate. He just nodded and said, "That is nice." But when Derek scored a single goal in a recreational soccer game the following week, Gerald organized a celebration. He bought a cake, invited the neighbors, and spent the whole evening praising Derek like he had won the World Cup. I told myself it was nothing. Gerald was just still adjusting. Derek was his biological son, after all. It made sense that he would be more excited about Derek's achievements. My mother noticed too. I could see it in her eyes, the way she would look at me with a mixture of guilt and helplessness, but she never said anything to Gerald. Instead, she would find me later and whisper,
Gerald is still adjusting. Give him time. But time only made things worse. Derek started making comments, small jabs that were designed to cut. Must be nice being the perfect one, huh? He would say when I came home with good grades. Gerald would laugh along, never once telling Derek to stop.
I learned to ignore it to focus on my studies to keep my eyes on the prize. Then came the day I needed money for SAT prep books. College was getting closer, and I needed every advantage I could get. I asked Gerald if he could help me buy the books. He looked at me like I had asked for $1 million. "We need to save money," he said flatly. "Derek needs a new gaming setup for his birthday." A gaming setup. Hundreds of dollars for video games, but not a cent for my education. I did not argue. I got a job at the local pizza place, working weekends sometimes until midnight just to buy those books myself. My mother knew. She would slip me $20 here and there when Gerald was not looking, her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. "I am sorry, honey," she would say. "Just focus on your studies." I did. I studied harder than ever because I knew that my future depended on no one but myself. The end of my junior year brought both the best and worst news of my life. I received a letter from Ohio State University. I had been accepted into their engineering program with a full scholarship. Full tuition, room and board, everything covered. Years of hard work, sacrifice, and determination had finally paid off. I held that letter in my hands and felt like I was holding my entire future. That same week, Derek received his own news. He had failed his senior year. His grades were so low that he would not graduate. He would have to repeat the year or get his GED. Gerald's reaction was predictable. He blamed the teachers, the school system, the curriculum, everyone and everything except Derek. He never once acknowledged that Derek had spent more time gaming than studying, that Derek had skipped classes and ignored his homework. In Gerald's eyes, Derek was the victim of an unfair world. That night at dinner, I made the mistake of sharing my good news. "I got accepted to Ohio State," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "Full scholarship." Gerald barely glanced at me. "Good for you. But this family has bigger problems right now." Derek slammed his fist on the table and stormed upstairs. Gerald immediately followed him, leaving my mother and me sitting in silence. Under the table, my mother reached for my hand and squeezed it. I could see the tears in her eyes, but she said nothing. That was the moment I realized that no matter what I achieved, I would never matter in this house. In the weeks that followed, Gerald changed his approach. Instead of ignoring me, he started having private conversations with me always when my mother was not around. His tone was calm, almost reasonable, which made his words even more poisonous. "You know, Justina," he said one evening, "sometimes being humble means not showing off so much. Derek is struggling, and your success is making him feel worse. You are supposed to be brothers now. Do you not care about how he feels?" I tried to explain that I was not showing off. I was just working hard, pursuing my dreams, doing what my mother had always taught me to do. Gerald waved his hand dismissively. "Maybe you should think about this family as a whole, not just yourself." His words planted a seed of guilt in my mind, a guilt that had no right to exist but took root anyway. I started questioning myself. Was I being selfish? Was my success really hurting Derek? Should I be doing more to help him? Those doubts ate at me for weeks until Gerald made his true intentions clear. 1 month before my high school graduation, Gerald called me into the living room. My mother was there sitting quietly on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. Derek was there too, leaning against the wall with a smug expression on his face. "Justina," Gerald began, his voice serious, "I have been thinking about what is best for this family. I think you should defer your college admission for a year. Stay home, get a job, help Derek get back on his feet. He needs a role model, someone to guide him. I could not believe what I was hearing. You want me to give up my scholarship, the one I worked years to earn? Gerald's expression hardened. That is what family does. Derek is your brother now. You should want to help him. I do want to help him, I said, my voice rising, but not by destroying my own future. I worked too hard for this. I am not going to throw it away because Derek refused to put in the effort. Gerald stood up, his face turning red. If you go to college, do not expect any support from this house, not a single dollar. You will be on your own. I looked at my mother, desperate for her to say something to defend me, to be the mother who had always told me that education was everything. She looked away. I found my mother alone in the kitchen later that night. She was washing dishes, her back to me, her shoulders shaking slightly. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "please." "You cannot let him do this." She turned around and I could see the tears streaming down her face. "Justina, I love you more than anything in this world, but Gerald is my husband. I cannot go against him. Maybe you could take a gap year, just 1 year. Things might be different by then." I felt like I had been stabbed in the chest. "Mom, do you remember what you always told me, that my education is our ticket out of this life?" She looked down at the floor. She did not answer. For the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly alone. The woman who had raised me, who had sacrificed so much for me, who had promised that my future mattered more than anything, had chosen a man she had known for 2 years over her own son. Derek made sure to twist the knife even deeper. He started openly taunting me, no longer bothering to hide his contempt. "See, Dad," he said one evening at dinner, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I told you he thinks he is better than us. He does not care about this family. He only cares about himself." Gerald nodded approvingly. "You are right, son. Some people are just selfish." A few days later, I discovered that Derek had gone through my room. Some of my study materials notes I had spent months compiling had been torn to shreds. When I confronted him, Gerald dismissed it immediately. "Stop making drama. Derek said it was an accident. Just let it go." There was no accident. Derek had destroyed my things deliberately, and Gerald knew it. But the truth did not matter in that house. The only truth that mattered was whatever made Derek feel better about himself. I realized then that I was living in a house where I would never belong, where my achievements would always be resented, where my dreams would always be sacrificed on the altar of someone else's mediocrity. 1 week before my high school graduation, Gerald delivered his final ultimatum. He gathered everyone in the living room, his expression cold and determined. "Justina," he said, "I am giving you one last chance. Either you give up that scholarship and stay home to help Derek, or you pack your bags and leave this house. You will not be part of this family anymore." Derek grinned, enjoying every second of my humiliation. I looked at my mother. She was crying softly, her hands trembling. I waited, hoping, praying that she would finally stand up for me, that she would choose her son over this man who was trying to destroy my future. She turned her face away. In that moment, something inside me broke. But something else was born from the wreckage, a clarity I had never felt before. I stood up slowly, surprised by how calm I felt. The fear and doubt that had plagued me for months had vanished, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. "I have spent my whole life trying to make you proud, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I worked, I studied, I did everything right. And this is what I get." I turned to Gerald. "You are not my father. You never were. You are just a man who married my mother and tried to use me to fix your own son's failures." Then I looked at Derek. "And you had every opportunity I had, the same schools, the same teachers, the same chances, but you chose to waste them. That is not my fault. It never was." I went upstairs and packed my belongings into a single backpack. I did not have some clothes, my laptop, my books, and the acceptance letter from Ohio State. Everything that mattered to me fit into one bag. I called Mrs. Patterson, my homeroom teacher, the one adult who had always believed in me. I explained my situation, and without hesitation, she offered to let me stay with her until I left for college. "You are going to do great things, Justina," she said. "Do not let anyone take that away from you." Before I walked out the door, I left a note on the kitchen table. "I am choosing my future. When you are ready to respect that, you know how to find me." My mother ran after me as I walked down the driveway. "Justina, wait, please. We can figure this out." I did not stop. I did not look back. I kept walking until her voice faded into the distance. I started at Ohio State that fall with nothing but my scholarship and my determination. The first year was brutal. Without any financial support from my family, I had to work 3 part-time jobs just to cover my living expenses. I delivered food, worked at the campus library, and tutored other students in math. There were nights when I survived on instant noodles and vending machine coffee nights when I wondered if I had made the right choice. But I never reached out to them. I cut off all contact with Gerald, Derek, and even my mother. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but I knew that if I let them back in, they would find a way to pull me down again. I graduated with honors. I was accepted into the master's program at MIT. After completing my degree, I was recruited by a leading technology company in California, starting at a 6-figure salary. I bought my own apartment in San Jose. I built a life that no one could take away from me. And then 7 years after I walked out of that house, a letter arrived. It was from my mother. Her handwriting was shaky, harder to read than I remembered. She wrote that Gerald had left her 2 years earlier, running off with another woman and leaving behind a mountain of debt. Derek had gotten a girl pregnant, abandoned her and the baby, and was now living with my mother, unemployed and aimless. But the part that made my hands tremble was the last paragraph. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I failed you as a mother. I chose the wrong person and I lost the one person who truly mattered. I am so sorry, Justina. I just want to see you one more time. I am sick. The doctors say I do not have much time left." I read that letter over and over again, feeling emotions I thought I had buried long ago. Anger, grief, resentment, and somewhere underneath all of that, a love that had never completely died. I talked to my mentor at work, a woman who had become like a second mother to me over the years. She listened to everything and then said something that changed my perspective. "Forgiveness is not about them, Justina. It is about freeing yourself." After many sleepless nights, I booked a flight to Ohio. I was not going back to forgive, not entirely. I was going back to close a chapter, to face the past, so that it would no longer have power over me. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling the lawn, overgrown, the windows dirty. It was nothing like the pristine home Gerald had been so proud of. My mother was sitting in the living room when I walked in. She was in a wheelchair, her body frail, her hair completely white. She looked like she had aged 30 years instead of 7. When she saw me, she burst into tears. "Justina, you came. I did not think you would come." I sat down next to her. I did not hug her, not yet. The wounds were still too fresh. But I took her hand in mine and let her cry. She told me everything. How Gerald had become emotionally abusive after I left, blaming her for driving me away, criticizing everything she did. How Derek had spiraled further downward, dropping out of community college, getting into trouble, never taking responsibility for anything. How she had spent years regretting the choice she made that night, wishing she could go back and stand up for me. "I was so afraid of being alone," she whispered. "I thought I needed Gerald to survive. I forgot that I already had someone who loved me. I forgot to protect you, and I lost everything anyway. I listened without interrupting. There was no point in arguing or accusing. The past was the past. Nothing could change it now. Derek showed up while I was there. He looked terrible, older than his years, his face unshaven, his clothes wrinkled. When he saw me, his expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, resentment, and finally, a desperate kind of hope. "Look who finally showed up," he said, trying to sound tough. "The golden boy, come to rub your success in our faces." I looked at him calmly. "I am not here for you, Derek. I am here for my mother." His bravado faltered. He started talking about how hard things had been, how he needed money, how he was trying to get back on his feet. It was the same old story, the same old excuses. "I built my life from nothing," I said. "I did it because you and your father tried to take everything from me. I am not going to fund your choices. If you want a better life, you are going to have to earn it yourself." Derek stormed out of the house, cursing under his breath. My mother did not ask me to help him. She understood that it was not my responsibility to save someone who had never tried to save himself. I stayed in Ohio for 2 weeks. My mother and I talked for hours every day, sometimes about the past, sometimes about nothing at all. There were moments of tears, moments of silence, moments of unexpected laughter when we remembered happier times. I did not tell her I forgave her. I was not sure I had. But I told her something that was perhaps more important. "I am learning to let go of the anger, Mom. Not for you, not for Gerald, not for Derek, for myself. I carried it for 7 years and it was heavy. I am ready to put it down." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "That is all I can ask for." Before I flew back to California, she gave me a small box. Inside were photographs from my childhood old report cards, awards I had won, and a stack of letters. She had written to me every year since I left, one letter for each birthday, each Christmas, each milestone she imagined I might be reaching. She never sent them because she did not know where I was and because she was afraid I would not read them anyway. 3 months later, I received a phone call. My mother had passed away peacefully in her sleep. I flew back for the funeral. It was a small service, just a few neighbors who remembered her from the old days. Derek did not show up. I stood at her grave for a long time after everyone else had left. I did not cry. The tears had been spent long ago. "You made mistakes, Mom," I said quietly, "big ones. But you also made me who I am. The strength I have came from watching you survive all those years alone. The determination came from the dreams you planted in me when I was just a kid. I wish things had been different, but I am grateful for what you gave me. Rest now. You are finally free." I returned to California and continued building my life. But something had changed. I started volunteering as a mentor for students from difficult backgrounds, kids who reminded me of myself at 16. I helped them with scholarship applications, gave them advice, and most importantly, I told them that their circumstances did not define their futures. One of my mentees asked me once, "How did you do it? How did you keep going when everyone was against you?" I thought about it for a moment before answering. I realized that not everyone who is supposed to love you will choose you, and that is not your fault. Your worth is not determined by the people who failed to see it. It is determined by what you do with the chances you create for yourself. "But did not you want revenge?" she asked. I shook my head. "Revenge is a trap. It keeps you tied to the people who hurt you. The best thing I ever did was walk away and build a life so good that their rejection became irrelevant. That is the real victory, not proving them wrong, but proving yourself right." Sometimes I still think about that 16-year-old kid who walked out of his stepfather's house with nothing but a backpack and a dream. He had no idea what was waiting for him. He did not know if he would succeed or fail. But he knew one thing for sure: his future was worth fighting for. And if you are going through something similar right now, if you are stuck in a situation where the people who should support you are tearing you down, instead, I want you to know this: your pain does not define you. What you do with it does. You do not need their permission to chase your dreams. You do not need their approval to succeed. All you need is the courage to take that first step, even when everyone else is telling you to stay. Keep going. Your story is not over yet. I want to ask you something before we end. Have you ever had to choose between your dreams and the expectations of people who claim to love you? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and your story might help someone else who is struggling right now. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss the next story. Every like, every comment, every share helps more people find these stories and know that they are not alone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are stronger than you think, braver than you feel, and more worthy than anyone has ever told you. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.